Hey, thanks for dropping by and checking out this message. These lessons come from our Sunday gatherings at Victory Christian Church in Franklin, Indiana. Our 5th through 8th graders meet at 9 or 10:30 a.m. and our high schoolers meet from 6 to 8 p.m. If you find that this content brings value to your life, then please consider subscribing and hitting that bell so that you can be notified when we upload our next message. Our hope is that this video brings more clarity into your life as to who God is and what He wants for you in light of who Jesus is and what He's done for you. Enjoy and have a great day. So we're going to continue through a series that we've been in the last few weeks called Storyteller. Anybody remember what it's about? Stories? That's very good. That's very keen insights right there. What specifically about stories?
Stories in the Bible.
Parables, stories in the Bible. Yes, we're on the right track. We're in church, right? Yes. Okay, good. So you guys are paying a little bit of attention. Do you guys remember what one we talked about last week?
Being left out.
Being left out, yeah, because we all love to be left out, right? No. And yeah, no, that's what we talked about. Juniors, I didn't give you candy, and then I gave you candy. So it's one of those that we're telling these stories through the lens of who Jesus is and what He was trying to accomplish with the parables that He told. What is a parable? Other than it's a story. What is a parable? An earthly story with a heavenly meaning. You must have grown up in church and heard that a lot. Yeah, good job. Yeah, that's, I think, the same exact wording that I learned when I was like in kindergarten, I think. I don't know. But like, yeah, it's one of those things that you grow up in church, that's what you hear. And that's I think, the best way to define it. It's an earthly story, meaning it's relevant to our lives. It's stuff that you and I encounter every single day, but it's got a spiritual meaning to it. It's something that goes deeper than just beyond the story. There's something represented within the story. And in every story, you and I are searching for where we fit in that story. Which person we identify with within the story, and then it makes sense in our lives and it resonates with us. So before we go any further into today's parable, into today's story, how many of you have some pet peeves? Anybody? You got like pet peeves you're famously known for? Like what?
Oh, I don't know. I just know that there are.
Yeah. Chewing with your mouth open. How many of you that's a pet peeve? How many of you you're like, oh, I need to work on that then because I do that. What else? Lying. Pet peeve. How many of you love to be lied? No. Like we all hate being lied to, right? Pet peeve. Yeah. You first, then you. We'll come back to you. Evan, what was yours?
When I hold the door open for someone, they put their hand in the door as if I'm not capable of holding it.
When you hold the door for someone like a gentleman and then the person coming through doesn't trust you, so they hold it themselves anyway. Okay. Yeah.
When people walk on the wrong side of the hallway.
Walk on the wrong side. What's the wrong side of the hallway? Is it like when you're driving?
It's like the right side is walking this way, the left side is walking this way.
So then when you try to like not bump into somebody and they go the other way and it's like, oh, whoop, awkward. Yeah, okay. You remember yours?
Yes. When people just stand in the hallways.
When people just stand in the hallways, taking up space, traffic jams.
My biggest pet peeve is when somebody's like, come here, and I'm like, why? And they're like, no, come here, I'll tell you when you get here. And then they say something stupid like, bring me the room.
There you go. Yeah, that's good.
When people like mention something but won't tell you what it is, and they're like, "Oh, it's nothing."
Oh, like they're trying to get you to ask what the just ask me. Just tell me you want to say something. Yes. When people don't clear the apps on their phone. Yes. That is mine. Kills your battery. Yes.
When someone sends you like a text like I need to talk to you, and then it's like, okay, what do you want to talk about? And then like they just don't respond for like the rest of the day. You have no idea what they're going to talk about, and your anxiety is just like, what are they talking about?
Yeah, okay. Bad grammar. When someone's posting and they use the wrong your or their.
It's always fun to correct
Yes.
People are sarcastic, but their sarcastic voice doesn't sound sarcastic.
Sarcasm when it doesn't sound sarcastic, yes.
When people bite into string cheese.
When people bite into string cheese, yes. My son would drive you crazy. What was that?
People correct your grammar.
When people correct your grammar. So one person's pet peeve is incorrect grammar, and the other person's pet peeve is when they get corrected on their incorrect grammar. Okay. When someone's driving 10 miles per hour every day on Westview. Yes.
When people use their turn signals.
When people don't use their turn signals, or when they do that use their
When they don't, like when they're going into a turn and they don't use the turn
Yes.
signal.
It's like, oh, I could have gone around you had I known you were actually turning and not just stopping like an idiot.
Whenever you're like having a deep conversation with someone and they just keep responding, yep, okay, yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
When they tap on the brakes every 2 seconds.
Tapping on the brakes every 2 seconds. Yep. Some brotherly feuds going on there. So we all got things. Yes, last one.
When guys who sag their pants still wear a belt.
Yes. When guys with saggy pants are wearing a belt and obviously don't have to have pants that are halfway down their butt cheeks. Yes. Good. What? Baggy pants in general. Yes. Yes. Okay. So I think we've established we all have things that get under our skin, push our buttons, and like we have pet peeves that drive us insane, right? I'm right there with you. So you know what my number one pet peeve is? My number one pet peeve is anything that requires me to wait. It's called impatience. Yes, there's a word for it. But I hate waiting. In fact, I love the invention of smartphones because now when I'm waiting, I can at least watch YouTube, right? And so, like, yes, like any spare moment, it's like I'm in line at the BMV. It's called the BMV here. It's called the DMV in Missouri, so I have to always make sure I say it right. When you're waiting in line at the BMV, just get on your phone, right? Like stick the AirPods in and just listen, right? Or maybe when you're going to take a crap and you're just sitting there like, well, pull out the phone, and then your legs are asleep like 20 minutes later, and it's like, and like we don't know what waiting, we don't know how to wait and just like sit still, right? But waiting is the worst. In fact, I ordered a new computer like 2 weeks ago, and I ordered it February 4th. You know when it told me it was going to come in? March 6th. I'm used to Amazon Prime, people. I'm used to 1 day shipping, maybe 2 day shipping. And it's telling me that the biggest purchase I've made all year is going to make me have to wait over a month for it. I don't like it. Waiting is the worst. What? It is February. Well, the biggest thing in the last year. How's that? No, get this. Never mind. It's a tangent. I'm not going to do that. But here's the reality. None of us like the idea of waiting, right? How many of you think about the idea of waiting and you just, oh, I love waiting for things, right? Waiting for your test results, waiting to see if you made the team, waiting in line anywhere, waiting because some idiots are clustering up the hallway and just standing there instead of moving, right? We don't like waiting. We're a very impatient people. And so that makes what we're going to talk about today a very, very different. There's a reason it's called Instagram, right? Not eventual gram, right? Instagram. Instead of eventual gram. Get it? That wasn't funny. But yeah, that was a dad joke. I apologize. I take it back. Pretend I didn't say it. I'll probably say something else in like 2 minutes. But you guys are with me, right? We don't like waiting. I've made my point. None of us like waiting. So when we approach God, here's the thing. When we approach God, we talk about something every week in church. We do this every week in church, and we tell you to do it every week when you're not at church, and that is to pray, right? And if there's anything that is like a common denominator in any kind of prayers, it is that there is waiting. There's waiting to see if your prayer is going to get answered. There's waiting to see if your prayer is even going to be heard. There's waiting to see, we just don't like waiting. And so when it comes to the idea of praying, that's like active waiting. That's like choosing to wait. And it's not only just choosing to wait for something like materialistic like a computer. It's like waiting for God. It's waiting for like the next step in your faith. It's waiting for something, but you don't know what, because oftentimes we give up in the waiting when it comes to prayer. We're not a very patient culture, and we're not very good at this. And sometimes we find ourselves in the silence asking ourselves, is this an okay thing to pray for? Is God saying no, or is he saying yes, right? Because we're waiting for an answer. We don't know what he's thinking? Is God even listening? Am I doing this right? And some of us, we ask the question, does prayer even work at all? And how many of you wondered this? Legitimately, I have. Like, does prayer even work? Because God knows my thoughts, so why do I even need to pray them? Right? And if God knows my thoughts and God knows what's best for me and God works out all things for the good of those who love him, then what is the point of me praying if God is already doing the working and if he knows my every need and desire, right? So why even pray? You know, it's a question that I've wrestled with my entire life. It's a question that I'm constantly learning and growing, and at least I like to think so. But it's a question because it's something I think we all wonder. And so Jesus is telling this parable. He's telling this story, and he's in this situation with people where you know Luke is talking about this. And remember, Luke was a doctor, so he investigated Jesus' life, and he went and talked to all the witnesses. He went and spoke to people who actually spent time with them, and he documented down what people said. And this is what he says in Luke chapter 11, starting in verse 1. One day, Jesus was praying in a certain place. When he finished, one of his disciples said to him, "Lord, teach us to pray." So we know right away the goal of the story that he's telling is about how to pray, right? And I'll give you a little hint. It's how to pray in the waiting. And so Jesus goes on, next verse starting in verse 5. Then Jesus said to them, "Suppose you have a friend and you go to him at midnight and say, 'Friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread,' or, you know, lend me some Chick-fil-A sauce. I know you got some stored in your cabinet, right? Lend me some bread. You know, a friend of mine on a journey has come to me and I have no food to offer him." And suppose the one inside answers, "Don't bother me," right? It's like midnight. How many of you love your friends, but even at midnight, you may not answer the door, right? And so you may not answer the text or let alone the door. You'd have to actually get out of bed for that one, right? And "Don't bother me. The door's already locked and my children and I are in bed. I can't get up and give you anything." Jesus says, "I tell you, even though he will not get up to give you the bread because of friendship, yet because of your shameless audacity, he will surely get up and give you as much as you need." So you might be thinking, like, who does that, right? Who comes to the door at the middle of the night? You got to think about this guy's situation. It says that he has no food at all. So imagine he's in a desperate place. Obviously, he's desperate enough to like wake the whole town and go and knock on this guy's door until he gives him some bread, right? And so he's obviously like very desperate at this point. He's got a guest coming, and you know, in that culture, it's shameful if you don't have food to share with the guests who come to you on a journey, because it's not like they just jump on a plane and just get to you in a couple hours. Like they have to travel the road and walk for sometimes weeks at a time before they arrive at their destination. So you were supposed to be hospitable and feed your guests when they come. And so not only is this guy freaking out because he doesn't have food for his guests, but he's freaking out because he probably is hungry himself, right? In fact, he's probably so hungry and desperate and anxious about this that he goes over to his friend's house at midnight, wakes him up, wakes his family up, probably wakes up the whole block, just knocking on the door saying, "Hey," and even though he's saying, "Don't bother me," he's saying, because of your audacity to constantly be knocking and waiting, Jesus says he'll finally give in. And so it's kind of an interesting story. If you've grown up in church, it's not the kind of story that we tell every week. But Jesus is making the point. He's making the point that when we wait, when we're in the middle of praying, sometimes even when it comes to when we pray to God and we're waiting for an answer, God is not disappointed in us. He is with us in the waiting. And sometimes it feels like he's not answering. Sometimes we feel the shame of even having to ask him for whatever it is we're asking him. But God is saying, don't give up. The guy in this story did not give up. You know, and if I were the neighbor, I would have given up after one knock at the door, right? I would not have sat there and just kept knocking until they gave me bread. I would have given up right away. But he kept knocking, and Jesus doesn't say exactly how long he waited, but all the while he was probably getting hungrier, more tired, more anxious. And it's not like he could just like send a DM and wait for the little bubbles to pop up to see if he was going to reply. It was just, he had to constantly be annoying this guy. And after enough waiting and not hearing any of us, many of us start to wonder in our prayer life, is it worth it for me to keep asking? How many of you guys, you asked for something genuinely? You asked something to God and you've waited and you've asked for it, maybe for years, you've asked God for something, and you still don't have an answer. Right? I'm with you. There's things I've asked for prayer about, and I'm not talking about small things either. I'm big things that are important to my life. And I've asked God for them, and some things I still don't have answers for. And so we ask ourselves, is it worth it to keep waiting and to keep even asking at all? And the point that Jesus is trying to make here is that when it comes to prayer, don't just quit because it's quiet. So I think too often we mistake silence for absence. Like because we don't hear anything on the other end, or we don't know what God is saying, or maybe we're not even listening in the right places, we assume that there is no one on the other end of our prayers. We assume that silence equates absence, right? The neighbor may have felt discouraged, but he didn't quit. The neighbor may have gotten tired, but he didn't quit. He may have gotten bruised knuckles from knocking, right? But he didn't quit. The neighbor probably woke up the rest of the neighborhood, but he still didn't quit. And many of you, you've probably asked God for things, and you've had those prayers, and you've had to wait. And sometimes it wasn't even waiting anymore. It was that you got your answer, and the answer was not what you prayed for. How many of you, you've had that happen too? You prayed for something, and you prayed for it so earnestly, thinking that maybe in faith, God will answer in your favor because of your faithful praying. But then he answers, and it's not the answer that you've been praying for all that time. It can feel discouraging. But this parable is less about what we get and more about who we are talking to. We are talking to a God who promises never to leave us, a God who promises to always be with us. God's word says that if we seek him, we will find him. If we seek him, we will find him. And sometimes in our prayer lives, it doesn't feel like that is always the case, but he promises he will always help us experience peace, regardless of the outcome. He promises to comfort us even in our darkest hours. He promises us that he will never leave us or forsake us. And he promises that nothing can separate us from his love. And I know when it feels like he's not answering, that can be a difficult promise to believe in. But God keeps his promises, and because of that, we can keep asking. God welcomes our prayers. He welcomes our asking. And he's not getting annoyed with us. He's not getting fed up with us. He earnestly wants what's best for us. And so it's less of a question about what it is that we are or not getting, but it's more about who it is that we're talking to, who it is that we're praying. And if we can give God the benefit of the doubt and trust him that he knows what's best and he's working in our best interests, then it can make it easier when we don't always get the answers that we want. And this is probably one of the hardest lessons to learn as a Christian, is how do we keep being faithful in the silence? And many people walk away from their faith because of the silence. But the question I want to ask you today is, what do you think God is like? Because the way you answer that question will drastically change where your faith goes. If you assume that God is annoyed with your questions, you're probably going to walk away when you hear silence. But if you assume that he's a good father who loves you and wants what's best for you and is always working in your best interests, then it will allow us to keep faith. So I want you to remember that God is worth going to. He keeps his promises. He's good. He's present with us. He listens. He comforts us. And we can keep going to him. So what is it that you're asking for? When it comes to praying and when it comes to waiting, I love the description that I heard. I was at camp one year, and I was sitting out there in the audience, and the guy who was leading worship, he was starting the song that was all about, waiting on the Lord. Have you guys heard the song, like, strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord, we will wait? It's not my favorite song, but he was getting ready to lead that song, and I will always love that song now because of what he said before it. When I think about waiting on the Lord, I think about just sitting there and like twiddling my thumbs, just waiting for answers, and sitting there in silence, waiting, or maybe pulling out my phone and and moving on while I'm waiting and just not doing anything really until I hear from God and I get my answer. But he used the analogy of a waitress or a waiter. When you go to the store and you're being waited on, is the waiter or the waitress, are they just standing there waiting for your order and then waiting for the food to come out? Waiting for your drink to be just low enough to like refill it? No, that would be super awkward and creepy, right? But they're not just standing there waiting. They are doing things. They're going and talking with other people. They're going back to the kitchen. They're coordinating with the cooks. They're bringing food out. They're wiping down tables. And any of you who have worked a job in the food industry know that when you're being waited on or you're waiting on other people, you are very active. And in fact, you're doing a lot. You're multitasking a lot of the time while you're waiting. And when we're waiting on God, it's kind of the same way. We're not just sitting there twiddling our thumbs waiting for his answer before we act. We are actively doing the things that we know we can do. Our food may not be ready for us to go out and get, but we know that we can bus tables. We know that we can go and talk to other people. We know that there's other things that we can be doing in the waiting. And so waiting is actually more of an active role than a passive role. And so when we're waiting on God and when you're praying for something, I want you to do a couple of things when you're praying for something significant in your lives. And you can use the paper that you got during the prayer experience, and you can write it on this. But first, I want you to write it down. Write down what you are praying for, okay? It's that simple. Secondly, I want you to slow it down, which means that you have to put something down. Maybe it means putting your phone down. Maybe it means putting your Xbox down. Maybe it means, whatever distraction you have going on, you just put it down and you allow yourself to be bored, to be free of distraction, and just let your mind rest. I think many times we don't hear God's voice because all the other voices are drowning his out. So we have to write write down our prayers, and then slow it down. Stop just wasting time in the waiting, but becoming active in listening for his voice. So what do you need to set down or put down in order to slow down? Maybe you need to set a reminder to slow down and pray. Because if you're like me and you get busy and occupied with stuff, you probably forget to do some of the important things throughout your day. And so maybe just setting an alarm in your phone that at this time I'm going to pray. And you can work your way through that weekly calendar. Today I'm going to pray at 7 a.m. After I've gotten up, I've gotten ready, and before I get on the bus or before I head to school, I'm going to spend 5 minutes and I'm going to put everything down and I'm just going to pray. So think about what that is for you. And when it comes to prayer, I just want you to remember, don't quit because it's quiet. The temptation can be, again, to just kind of give up. We stop praying because we stop seeing results. But results happen through prayer over time. And they're not immediate. And when one of our pitfalls is patience, then often we miss out on what God is actually trying to say to us. So I'm going to pray for you guys, and we'll dismiss to our small groups. Hey, hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and make sure you're subscribed so you're notified when we upload future videos. Have a great day.